Hello and welcome to the Sports Reform Episode 1 Playoff Excitement. I'm Jeff here alongside with JT and Scott as we get to go over some ways to improve sports or help them see themselves in a different light. Today we plan on going over some ways to improve NBA playoffs, some positive stars or some moments from the sports year, a couple wonky rules and ways to improve college lacrosse, and then hope you enjoy your time. If you want to get in touch with us, you can reach out to us on Twitter at @thesportsreform or by email at sportsreform@gmail.com.
How we can improve the NBA regular season and the playoff structure to make it more exciting to the casual fan. And so how can the leagues, and it doesn't just have to be the NBA, we could talk NHL, we could talk NFL, we could talk MLB, soccer, whatever, but how can they get more fan excitement from the regular Joe Schmoes on the street? So
not everyone at once, right? I'll just go ahead and jump in. We have a little bit of prelim talk that we were discussing, and I think the NBA suffers a little bit from kind of where college basketball fails too. We made the joke that really there's only two games in the college basketball regular season that matter, and that's Duke, North Carolina, and Duke. And unfortunately, the way that the NBA season is laid out, leading up to the playoffs, yes, there are incentives to obviously have a better record when it comes to playoffs, but as far as the individual games go, there's not really a great incentive for the individual games mattering. Now, obviously, that is kind of how the season works. It's more of like that Eastern philosophy of, it's the journey more than the destination, that sort of thing. But at the same time, if the destination is the finals, you want that to really matter and stick out. So for the actual schedule, we had started in a little bit of discussion, seeing you have these travel schedules where really, if you have teams where it's one of the better teams in the league that's coming to your town and they don't come very often and their big three starters are not playing, I mean, that's just a real kick in the pants just starting off. That's the one that comes to my mind, because being in Atlanta, we have the Hawks games, but when some of the teams come to town, we
see the Warriors once a year, we see the Spurs once a year in Atlanta.
Yeah, and you think of the marquee players, and if you think, okay, I want to go see that, or honestly, even if you're watching them on TV, a lot of times you might have the out-of-market games that you don't get to see every now and then. You're not willing to fork up the extra money for the special packages that you get to see every game on, so you just wait for them to come to town, even if you're watching them on TV. It's Cleveland, but LeBron's not playing, or, it's Golden State and their big three are sitting on the bench the whole time. I'm not really interested in watching that game, to be honest.
Yeah, and this actually it all started with Gregg Popovich a couple years ago, where they had 4 games on the road in 5 days. And in the last one, in this very famous story, he set Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, and Manu Ginobili, and the league actually fined the Spurs, and I think they fined Gregg Popovich too. And he just shot back at him, and he was having none of it. He's like, you gave us this schedule. The players physically can't play this many games in this many days with that kind of travel schedule. And so it's not a function of coaches, wanting to give a middle finger to anybody, but at the same time, would you rather, if the choice was see LeBron James play this one game and have him be injured for the rest of the season, or rest him a game, good and well what his coach is going to do. He's going to rest him. The owner's going to say the same thing.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's a bad decision on the coaches. It's a business, and you're running that for the opportunity of, especially getting to the finals. But, for that player, if it's earlier in that player's career, you're not going to just wear him out the first year, that sort of thing. That was just one thought as far as that goes. For the casual fans, and the reason we've kind of discussed this is because none of us are like diehard NBA fans for any particular team. It's not like we've intensely watched every game for the past 20 years of one team, know the insides and outs and all the legacy players and all of that. But just thinking, we threw out esports. One thing that the NBA is struggling with, and there's a few of the other teams, other leagues that are struggling with it, are competing with these other alternatives, like you have esports, where there was an esports finals just last year where the viewership of that esport was more than both the NBA and the MLB finals combined. So you have this problem where you're running into, whether it's just young viewership or alternative viewership, is going to different avenues, and you can't compete with them. There's obviously going to be a lot of different reasons. That's a whole nother conversation for another episode. But you have to make at least some recognition that you have to be more relatable to your fans and to really change to reach out to. It is a sport, but you have to know your market and consumers.
Well, and Jeff, you and I were talking about this as well, that when you spend the entire regular season under the assumption of a Cavs-Warriors final, no one's going to really start paying attention until we get to the final, which is where we are now.
I know in years past, the NBA's Christmas Day was when people tuned in. It was kind of the end of the NFL regular season, and people are like, oh, I'm just going to wait till Christmas. That's when the league starts. I think this year, unless you were maybe one of the 5, 6 seeds or 7 seeds going into that kind of playoff push, you weren't tuning in until the playoffs started. Maybe you're just now tuning into the finals because 82 games, it's a long time. You talk about the Cavs, and everybody said in the playoffs they flipped a switch. All that means to me is they play defense. So in 82 games, these teams playing the 4 games in 5 days, which is now I think every team did that this year.
Mm-hmm.
They're not playing defense. They're not gonna. That's when you get hurt. You're going backwards. Ankles go away, knees go out. Mm-hmm. Crap happens. So you have these just ridiculous schedules. One thing the NHL did this year to help alleviate that is each team got a 5-day bye week where they had no hockey activity, no practices, no games, no travel.
And it was league mandated too. It wasn't just, oh, we're going to give you a week off and you do whatever with that time. It was, no, you're not allowed to practice.
Right. Yeah. It was a true bye week, and I think the players really love that. It did compact their schedule. They had a couple more back-to-backs. But the NBA next year has already stated they're going to start a week earlier, so to help alleviate that 5 games.
And two, I think back-to-backs for one thing, that's a lot easier than 4 games in 5 days. I mean, if you have 2 or 3 or 4 back-to-backs throughout the course of an 8-month season, that's totally different than you play 13 games in a month or 4 games in 5 days.
And if you look at like in minor league sports, the ECHL, we'll take our local team here is Atlanta. They'll play a game Friday night, Saturday and Sunday, typically 2 cities, but that's only an 18-man roster, 2 which are goalies. So that's 16 skaters playing 3 full games in under 72 hours. But they have that time off in between to rest up and heal. Yep. So I lose a little respect for the NBA players when it's 42-minute game and it's nowhere near as physical as hockey, and these minor leaguers are doing it every weekend. But they're also making a lot more money, so you want them healthy at the end.
Yeah.
And you want them healthy to go to the next city for the fans to see. So I think really the owners will probably never go for it, but if you can shorten it down to 70 games, I think it's a good number. You get rid of those 4 and 5s. And you really don't lose a lot from what people aren't watching anyways on TV.
Although I think, and I wouldn't be surprised if this actually happens, but I think a more realistic scenario, and we mentioned this a minute ago with the NHL, where they actually made the season longer, not in terms of games, but just in terms of calendar time, that if the NBA added an extra month, it would shorten the offseason. Granted, they could probably even package that into more marketing, more hype around free agency or the draft, because instead of, it's the draft and you wait 2 weeks to free agency and that sort of thing. If it comes all in almost a rapid fire mode, that keeps the fans engaged. But if you actually lengthen the regular season by, a month or 6 weeks, and you can space out the games where you're not playing more than 3 times in any 7-day stretch, that's going to alleviate fatigue on the players, or even if it's just travel fatigue. It would probably make them more money because the hype train goes for longer in terms of merchandising. I mean, it's the same in terms of attendance and attendance revenue and stadium revenue and things of that and player salaries. But, you get, and I actually haven't looked up the statistics on this, but they do make a lot of money from their merch sales. Mm-hmm. Their marketing departments, local advertising, that sort of thing. So they could probably even make more money. So I think that's a more realistic possibility.
I think one thing that they could do, we kind of mentioned it with the shortening of the schedules, and I know we talked about how the owners obviously would vote against that because it is money out of their pocket, but at the same time, I think you could make that up almost, and I know this will sound dumb, so bear with me through this thought process, but almost on the Girl Scout cookie mentality of you're really having a premium on your product for a shorter amount of time. Think about it, you buy a box of Girl Scout cookies, you're paying what you think is probably too much, but at the same time, you can only get them for a few months out of the year. Yeah. And when you have them, it's like, oh man, I need to get that box of Samoas. I need that in my life. And so for the games, I mean, especially think about it for, I know we're getting off a little bit on the league, but the MLB, if you can't catch a game, you're like, oh, you know what, that's fine. We'll catch one, the next day or in a week. Like there's going to be one coming up just automatically. So it makes it to where you might prioritize them even better. I'm not saying that there wouldn't be the people out there who would say, oh, well, now you're taking away the availability, but you're putting a premium on that. And as well, I know we'll talk about it here in just a minute, but with the with things like the merch and the promotions, we talked about maybe if it's not a high priority matchup, so to speak. So, I mean, if we have the Hawks playing a team in Atlanta that no one cares about. You go on to StubHub and find the tickets for like $1. You think, okay, well, what can the league do to recognize, okay, these are two teams that maybe the average person wouldn't care about, but if you're there in the city, you care about your team, let's make the promotions on those nights instead of the nights when you have the big teams coming in, and make it your more popular ones, where it's like, the military appreciation, the Star Wars nights, those have popped up a lot really in the past 10 years. But
that's superhero nights.
Yeah, superhero nights, princess nights for all the little girls out there, those sorts of things.
The Hawks have their swipe right night.
Yeah, things like that where you can really plug and promote. Because
we still can't get dates. I said that you two are married.
Yeah.
There's a reason I can't.
We're not actively looking.
I would be in a coffin. But excuse me. Along that thought, really pushing that to where you're engaging your fans, because honestly, think about it. For me, when's the last time that I've been to a game that didn't have a promotion? Because for me, honestly, when I look at the schedules for these teams, I'll look and say, okay, well, are there any special nights coming up for things like the Gladiators? We'll talk about in a minute with the teddy bear toss, but that's a big deal for us. It's like, okay, we want to go and participate in that because we know it's for a good cause. It's a good thing with the community, and honestly, going to the sporting event itself is always a lot of fun. I enjoy Gladiators games. I enjoy any sporting event, really going and participating. But when there's an added benefit to going, and honestly, in the teddy bear toss, it's not an added benefit to me, but like something you're giving back to the community. Or if it's one of those, like we talked about, superhero nights, you go with your kids, and your kids are excited because they got to meet Iron Man or Batman, and you get to see the gleam in their eyes, that sort of thing. That really makes a difference, and not only does it add value to the sports itself, but around the community, especially within your city. For, like I said, whether it's families, the more casual fan, it's like, I'm going to go, and it's going to be more than a sporting event. It'll be truly just a fun time.
Yeah, I don't think you would need to give away bobbleheads to get people in the door if LeBron James and the Cavaliers were in town playing the Hawks.
As long as they're playing.
As long as they are actually playing. But because of those big hype matchups, the hype's there. You're probably going to have the attendance anyway. You don't really need more incentive, and unless you're trying to meet some kind of a business quota, which is always a possibility.
Right. I'll go ahead and throw it out there. Our Twitter poll this week is, did you wait until the Cavs versus the Warriors to get excited or tune in for the NBA Finals? So your choices are, I watched all the series, meaning you've watched every playoff game, or you've followed along, or now you're tuning in. I think for us at the table, that's probably what we're at now is Cavs Warriors here. We're tuning in, or what is the NBA if you just don't care for it at all. So that's our Twitter poll. You can find us.
If you don't know what the NBA is, why are you watching this podcast?
Because we cover everything, not just the NBA.
That's true.
You could be into a very limited sports and still watch.
I like Czechoslovakian cycloball. When are you going to talk about that?
I think that could be a good one for the wonky rules segments coming up in the future.
It's like, you're the only one of two people who's ever heard of that in this nation. We'll get to that later, we promise.
Extreme tennis, one of those crazy sports where it matches two together. Cool. Well, we're going to move on real quick. We have the segment for Positive Star of the Week. This week it's sponsored by Moosely Hats. Incredible company doing some amazing work. If you wouldn't mind going over and checking them out, you can find out information and ordering options there at mooselyhats.com, and that's MOOSELYhats.com. Go over and check it out. And for the Positive Star of the Week, we're going to be focusing on hockey teams and, like we mentioned earlier, the teddy bear toss. So we have two, just to note, and Jeff's got a little bit more information here, but for the two just thrown out there, for two AHL teams, both Hershey and Calgary, I've collected each over 20,000 teddy bears at their teddy bear toss games this year. And kind of wrapping into the previous segment, that's just an incredible thing to know for communities. And Jeff, I think you mentioned they're adding that into not just the big time hockey teams, but other places are doing it as well.
Yeah, we have it here in Atlanta for the ECHL. There were several teams I saw advertise it this year around the league. College hockey has started adding it. So you start adding up, we have 27 teams in the ECHL. College hockey has, I don't know how many participated, but there's 70 programs in college hockey. You have the 32 AHL teams. All these teams starting to ramp up this giving back to the community. I think Calgary's actual number this year was over 26,000.
That's incredible.
And that's a game they've now moved to the Saddle Dome where the Flames play because they sell that game out and they just rain down the teddy bear. So for those of you who don't know what a teddy bear toss is,
why, thank you.
The people at home who are like, what are they talking about?
So basically, it's a game. It's set aside. You bring in some teddy bears new for children in a hospital, typically with pretty serious diseases. They ask that they're new. That way they don't compromise any immune systems. And when the home team scores their first goal, you rain down teddy bears upon the ice. So it's been a really awesome thing. Here in Atlanta, we get to see the pictures of when the Gladiators take these they take them, I believe, in Atlanta to the Children's Hospital of Atlanta, or CHOA. And these kids, you get to see a hockey player in a jersey, and they're bringing gifts, and just seeing the kids' faces light up who've been in these hospitals for weeks is pretty awesome. So I know this is something with this segment we're looking how are teams or players or individuals giving back to the community, and we're kind of just shouting out hockey here because this has been pretty outstanding. We're talking over combined about 70,000 teddy bears. So it's a very large impact across the United States and into Canada, reaching out to these kids who are fighting battles a lot harder than most of us. So.
And the kids, they'll remember that too for the rest of their lives.
Yes.
We did talk about the teddy bears, but it's really any stuffed animals It's really exciting. It's really exciting to see some of these unique stuffed animals that people will bring to these games. If nothing else, you get to learn who has bank and can bring the just giant teddy bears, or if it's the little dollar store ones. But either way, whatever kid's getting what, it's going to make a big difference.
We do not advise sitting by the glass for these games unless you want to throw a lot of bears because they rain down from the upper deck and they very rarely make the ice on the first throw. So be prepared to work if you sit.
You're just going to have to daisy chain them along down the lower bowl of the stadium.
It's that teamwork effect right there.
There you go.
All right, we're going to move on now to some interesting rules and rule changes we would like to see in sports. We're going to start with a rule change. Currently, it's Memorial Day weekend for us recording this here. And this is the National Lacrosse Championships for NCAA this weekend. Mm-hmm. This year, it is in Boston, Massachusetts, in Gillette Stadium for the men and women. For those of you not real familiar with lacrosse, the men's game is very, very different from the women's game. We're going to focus mostly on the men's here, but highlight some of the women's parts. So in college lacrosse, until this year, there was no official shot clock. The men has currently what's called timer on, and the women, you just had unlimited possession time. So you would see the women's game, they'd stand 7 players around the goal, in their 30-yard area and just throw the ball around for like 2-3 minutes. And it was a very boring game. And the women figured this out, that it was a very boring game, and they instituted a shot clock. So now once you get the ball, you have 90 seconds to get a shot on goal. The men's outdoor game has a 60-second shot clock. Once you get the ball, you have 60 seconds to shoot. The National Lacrosse League, which is indoor, quick plug, our Atlanta team is in the championship this upcoming week against the Saskatchewan Rush, 2-time defending champs. And the other interesting tidbit, this is the first time in professional sports where you'll have 4 brothers competing in a series. The Swarm have 3 and the Rush have the other brother. So,
and if you're the parents, you're just highly conflicted.
Very much so.
Mom sits on one side, dad sits on the other side.
But men's lacrosse has, I think, what we all hate in sports, and that's sliding scale rules. Mm-hmm. Meaning what's in the first quarter won't be the same in the fourth quarter. So in men's lacrosse, you get down the field, they'll let you substitute your players. So they give you about 30 seconds, and then another 30 seconds-ish. There's no official rule. And then they'll put on a timer or a shot clock at that point where you get 30 seconds to shoot. So it's in the first quarter, they'll give you sometimes up to like 2 minutes before they put this on, where in the fourth quarter, they might put it on in 30 seconds. So my suggested rule change to how to improve college lacrosse here for the men would be come up with some standard possession clock. Either as soon as you get the ball, you have 60 seconds to shoot, or once you get into the attacking third, you have 30 seconds to shoot.
Yeah, it's the half-court rule in basketball, but adapted to lacrosse.
Right, exactly. How you could improve on that, because I know here with this group, I'm more into lacrosse than you guys, but I think a lot of that is there's no uniform rule. People don't like the changes in rules.
Yeah, and it's different than a judgment call, where, was that a penalty? Was that not a penalty?
Exactly.
But things you don't want to see all of a sudden a goal rule change like that. But yeah, and you and I, you've coached lacrosse, and I've been to numerous lacrosse games, and when there's not a shot clock, and this is true of any sport, it can easily devolve into stall ball.
Exactly.
I mean, you guys have seen, or probably when you were in school or something, you had a basketball game, Pop Warner, the little kids, and there's no shot clock, and one team is clearly better than the other one. The other team will just hold the ball for the entire quarter.
Oh, there was my first year coaching. I think you were at the game. It was our second game of the season. We were playing a team better than us, but somehow we were tied with 3 minutes and 45 seconds left, and we got the ball. And we stood literally in the corner for 3 minutes and 15 seconds and called a timeout to run a final play. I mean, and to anybody who's watching, that was a boring 3 minutes and 15 seconds. Defense didn't challenge. We didn't even move. So I think that's what the sports, for entertainment purposes, have to get out of.
Yeah.
And absolutely. For the sports themselves, you have to realize, if it's college and lower down, so to speak, it might be a little bit different mentality, but the business aspect does have to come in. But for the enjoyability has to be recognized as well. As far as the rule changes themselves go, my wife referees soccer, and whenever there's a slight rule change, she hears about it, not necessarily because obviously she reads the rule book and knows how to call the games, but for people watching the games, they don't know rule changes, they don't like them, that sort of thing. But most of the time, if there's a rule change, it's for the better of the game because it's recognizing there's a problem with the way either the rule is being enforced or maybe the biggest thing is wording, things of that nature where it clarifies. And in this case, you're really making a change that's needed to where, like you're saying, it doesn't devolve to stall ball, where you're actively engaging the game to where it's more enjoyable with more action, because you don't want to see, just people standing around on the field keep away. You're not in the backyard watching your kids play. You paid money or you devoted the time to go see this game, and you want there to be the action of a sporting event. You're not watching a Scrabble tournament. You're invested in the sport itself.
Yeah. So that's kind of our take there on the shot clock for college lacrosse, a way to better that sport for the common fan at home. We're going to do a quick hit on a wonky rule that some of you may not be aware of. And If not, it's kind of a fun one. Everybody's seen a punt in college football or the NFL, I'm assuming, right? You snap the ball, guy kicks the ball. You hope.
Well, he's a Bears fan. He's seen us a lot of punts.
Yeah.
That one. Ooh.
Hey, we got rid of Cutler, and never mind, we didn't get much better.
Oh, you tried, though. You tried.
Yeah, we're going to be punting a lot this season. It's okay.
At least you weren't the Jags drafting the punter for a weapon.
In the third round.
In the third round, yeah. But there's some interesting rules with punting. We're going to read from the NFL rulebook, Rule 9, Section 1, Article 1.
Section 2.
I'm sorry,
Article
Section
1.
2. Touching behind the line. All right, and this says, any touching of the ball behind the line of scrimmage by a kicking team player is legal, even if the ball has crossed line and returns behind the line. So the example I will use for this is if you're in a 4th and 1 and you haven't been able to run the ball, you've just been really kind of shut down all day, or you want to try something out of the box. September 21st in 2013, Eastern Kentucky against Morehead State, there was a play. EKU lines up for a punt, and they snap the ball to the punter. The punter looks like he's about to do a rugby kick, but it's a horrible kick at first glance. The wide receiver catches the ball 1 yard behind the line of scrimmage and runs for the first down, which is completely legal as long as that touch occurs behind the line of scrimmage. It's in front of the line of scrimmage, it's a dead ball, but you are allowed to advance a ball touched behind your line of scrimmage.
And he doesn't even have to catch it. He can pick it up off the ground and run it.
As long as he gets that first contact in front of the line of scrimmage. So kind of your wonky rule you might not see too often. We will post a link on our Twitter page to that video. Again, that's the Sports Reform at Twitter. So enjoy your wonky rule.
And encourage the Dolphins to do it when they play the Bills, or they play the Bills and the Patriots next year. They invented the Wildcat offense.
The Bears might need it because who knows how their passing game's going to be.
We got a D- grade for our draft. I've never seen a worse grade, and I think it's too generous of a grade for what we did in our draft this year.
You traded how many picks to move up one spot?
We'll not talk about the specific details of that.
And while we're on that, that was the greatest con job by the 49ers in the history of all con jobs.
I will give credit to the 49ers. What our front office was thinking in Chicago, I'm not sure.
Apparently they weren't.
I think the Browns made out pretty good this year, too. If you look at the total picks on the trade they had with the Texans.
Yeah.
So is Deshaun Watson really worth all that?
Probably not anymore. All right, today we're going to wrap up something new. We're feeling it out. But one thing in sports, or it doesn't have to be within sports, that really just cheesed you off, or just cheeses you out. It gets on your nerves worse than anything. And one thing I noticed, and this does tie into sports, although it can be beyond in scope, because we live in kind of an instant gratification, soundbite-based highlight society. A lot of sports, especially now with YouTube and Twitter and everything, people like to post short 10, 15-second highlight videos of a spectacular play or something. I have to sit through a 30-second ad to see a 10-second video. I don't mind advertising. I understand where it comes from, but come on, if it's a 10-second video, keep the ad to at most 10 seconds or shorter.
It's like when you're paying shipping and the shipping is more than the item you're buying.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the same concept.
Oh, I just bought a $5 fidget spinner and it cost $30 to ship.
Ordered that direct from China, did you?
Actually, I don't know where it came from.
Oh. Okay. My sign off today is going to be actually somebody I very rarely agree with, but on this case, I think he got 100% right, was Bryce Harper and his no participation trophies, because let's face it, with the exception, I can think there's one league I agree with participation trophies, because the kids who are playing in that league are winners for getting out there because of what they had to overcome, and that's the Miracle Leagues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
And those kids have battled, again, off the field issues that a lot of us cannot comprehend. Mm-hmm. So they're already winners being on that field. But if you're standard Little League soccer, no. Unless you're making all-star teams, I mean, you're out there participating does not make you a winner. You got to earn it at some point in time. My former background as a teacher, there's a lot of sense of entitlement. So I agree 100% here with Harper. Winners get trophies. That's my send-off.
Because everybody already gets the ice cream after the game anyway.
Right.
Yeah, I got a participation trophy in my last year of T-ball because we came in 4th out of 4 teams. And I remember thinking, really? Oh, well, that was my kid self. Anyway, for my send-off, what's really grinding me recently, I found out that for the 2018 Winter Olympics that are going to be held in South Korea, that the NHL owners have announced that they're not going to be sending their players to it. I can understand for, possibly political reasons or safety reasons, those sorts of concerns. But at the same time, I think the Olympics are one of the last few things that we have on planet Earth, really, that really can transcend above anything else that's going wrong in the world. We do such a good job. There's always incidents at the Olympics, but for the most part, we have countries of the world saying, we're going to put aside everything else, and we're going to go and we're going to send our very best athletes to compete on the world stage, where more so than really any other sports, I know things like the Super Bowl get watched in a lot of countries, but you have those countries where they send one person and you have an entire country rallying behind that one person. And it's such a big deal. And then we're going to have the United States holding our people back, not sending our best to the world's competition due to just, like I said, I understand in their mind their reasons are justified, but for me, if we're going to compete on the world stage and be a good example for the other countries in the world, like I mentioned, the country that sends their very best, and we're sending our second best, what does that display to the rest of the world?
It'll be interesting, too, how many players go on their own accord. I think you'll see many Russians go. There's a lot of nationalistic pride there, which I kind of admire. Is it's country first, and then the team that pays them.
Well, especially because Russia got spanked in the last 2 Olympics.
One of which at home.
Yes, one of which on their own home turf. They're out for revenge.
Yeah.
Yep. We'll wrap it up. Again, remember, if you want to get in touch with us, it's sportsreform@gmail.com. You can send us emails, any questions, comments that you have. If you want to reach out to us by phone or possibly leave us a message, the number is 530-377-6787, or simply, as we put before, 530-3sports. And again, our Twitter is @thesportsreform. Again, just reach out to us. Let us know how you're liking the conversation and what we can do to improve, as well as just all-around sports being improved. Thank you so much for listening, and we looking forward to continuing the journey with you. Thanks.